All right. There he is. Let's see.
Oh, there we go.
There-
What's up, man?
The bigote to my cara. How about that?
Okay.
How are you, Danny Segura?
Good. I'm good, man. Doing well. How about you?
I am doing well. I am tired, but what else is new?
Baby sleeping better?
Not yet. They're not at 5 weeks. They're not really all that trainable.
Okay.
There's some things you can do to help, but not much.
Yeah.
So no,
Did you try putting whiskey in the bottle?
no. I don't believe in child abuse as a way to rear them. I know some people believe in that. That's not a thing I'm a biggest fan of. All right, how were the calls, my friend?
Very good, actually. And they were very
Concise?
yes, and also like the type of questions were very meticulous, and a lot of them geared towards like the industry, which was very very interesting as well. It's not just storylines, so that was cool.
Okay, very good.
Yeah. So let's talk about first some boxing because I feel like that's probably the biggest thing that happened this weekend, and yeah, let's discuss that.
All right.
Lukey, Jake from Oregon. What'd you think about Ruiz? Hit him with that 8 taco combination and just glide out, baby. El Cucuy!
Well, I don't know how El Cucuy has to do anything with Ruiz, but
So many fat jokes
yeah.
about poor Andy Ruiz. So many.
Hey, he's the champ though. Like,
You know what? Did you go to his
Whatever.
Twitter page?
yes.
His header picture is a giant Snickers bar.
Okay.
It's like it's
There you
just
go.
a Snickers bar.
I mean, DC embraces it. Remember the chicken video,
yeah,
right?
those guys. I mean, like you literally can't hide it, but they don't try to. They don't try to
Mhm.
pretend they're something that they're not.
Also, it's like once you're the champ, like, what are you gonna say? Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, you're the champ.
Dude, I loved watching Ruiz do that to Anthony Joshua. Anthony Joshua's always been a good guy. He's a
Yeah.
he's a good role model as an athlete. He's great for boxing.
Yeah.
I'm excited about the rematch. I don't know. There was don't you agree? Wasn't there something truly satisfying, to borrow from Snickers, about watching Andy Ruiz just knuckle him into the dirt?
There was. For me, it was mostly like a big fu to the promoters. Like that's what happens when you get too greedy and you're holding out. You know, building these fighters even more and more than they need to, and not making the fights that the fans want to see. So I don't know if do you think this killed any of the interest between Anthony Joshua and say like a potential Wilder fight or
These
Fury?
people are so stupid.
I feel like it did. I mean, the guy was in defeat.
No, I don't think so at all.
A little bit.
No. I mean, would it have been better had
The intrigue of like, oh, someone's got to lose. You know what I'm saying? Like,
yeah, maybe
the undefeated's got to go.
maybe that, but you already had Wilder catch the draw with Fury, however controversial that might have been.
Draws a draw. It didn't feel like a loss either. Guy almost felt like a
It
victory.
didn't, but it showed some certain weaknesses with both guys, I suppose,
Sure.
or strengths. And
I mean, when Klitschko fought, Joshua,
he
we saw
knocked him
some-
down several
yeah, we
times.
saw
By the way,
some weaknesses,
several.
yeah.
I think there's a lot of guys who have knocked Joshua down. I think 4 or 5 at this point.
Yeah.
So his chin is certainly a bit condemned in that regard, which is much more important in boxing, I think, in certain
Mm-hmm.
ways. Anyway, point being is, no. I mean, this idea that it's not. I mean, look, would you have optimally preferred to have made the fight relatively soon and then gotten a win here as a way to build it? Yes. The fight may have been a little bit bigger. But the reality is you now have Ruiz, this new interesting player in this division.
Yep.
The other fight, when they eventually, like people, I'm not going to buy Wilder versus Joshua now. What nonsense. Of course
that's-
people
that's
still will.
BS.
Will it be as big? No. But your general interest in heavyweight boxing is much higher as a consequence of what Andy Ruiz did. Only in boxing is a cool-ass upset
Yeah.
all of a sudden bad news. Why? Why is it bad news? It's awesome.
Yeah. I mean, all of a sudden, Reese is now a player in there, and I'd like to see him against other guys as well, not just Joshua.
Marquez flatlined Pacquiao, and then Pacquiao versus Mayweather set all the records. This argument
That was different, though.
Why is it
That was
different?
That was different.
Why?
Because that had been teased for so long.
And this hasn't?
At the end, we just wanted to see it, but it was still.
and this hasn't. You put Fury versus Fury
look,
versus,
it's still going to be an interesting fight.
I was like, you put Fury versus Joshua. Yeah, Fury versus Joshua at Wembley. Oh my
it's
God!
still going to be
dude.
big, but the fact that he's no longer undefeated, that does kill a little bit of.
I
the
think
fight.
that's a talking point that people repeat that will not be borne out by the facts. I don't believe that even a little bit. I don't believe it. Sorry.
All right, let's agree to
I'll
disagree.
bet you $1.
Okay, I have $1.
If I'd said 2, would you have 2?
I think that's that's my max. Yeah,
All right.
I can get a pan de uno for $2 at the corner.
Those are
that's-
delish.
Yeah. So let's talk about this is another boxing question, and then we'll move on to the MMA stuff. This is actually a really, really interesting question.
Okay.
Hi, Luke. Hi, Danny. It's John from Birmingham in the UK. Massive fan of the show. Just wanted to ask you, with Joshua's defeat and the doubt that puts in the first super fights with Wilder and Fury, why do you think it is that defeats in MMA don't seem to affect people's careers on the whole as much as they do in boxing? Thanks. Keep up the great work.
Well, as I mentioned before, we've put in mechanisms inside MMA like tapping, which we borrowed from jiu-jitsu and sort of made more widely applicable as a way to bring humanity to the game. I think there's a general sense, believe it or not, as savage as MMA is about the humanity of losses. But there was we dealt with it with the question from the tweets about the matchmaking model. Dude, there are just way too many tough fights consecutively for L's not to show up. If you have the pick of the litter and you can pick and choose opponents, yeah, you shouldn't have as many losses. You should have much, much less. If you're forced to take a fight because you can't say no for whatever reason, either money or competition, don't want to get sideways with the promoter, whatever, yeah, you're going to take some L's. And so people kind of understand that.
Also, by the nature of the sport, like MMA having so many martial arts in them and you know, having so many paths to victory, like the chance of an upset, you know, increases by a lot. So, you know, that's also, I feel like, considered, you know, anything can happen in that crazy sport.
Yeah, it's how, like, you can be better, like Jacare as, like, can be way better than you on the ground. Exactly. You hit him with a head kick, you can then take his back and choke Jacare out. Like, I'm inventing something.
Right.
But I one time did a prediction, I got it so bad, it was Mark Bocek versus Mac Danzig. And I was like, no way Mac Danzig can sub Mark Bocek. And in a straight grappling match, I would bet on Mark Bocek 100 times out of 100. The problem was he got stung with some strikes, couldn't defend himself, and Mark Bocek got his back taken, and Danzig won via submission. So, like, things like that are crazy. And, of course, I got chewed up online for that prediction, which I deserved. Yeah, of course.
Yeah. Also, like, I feel like in MMA, since, you know, there are rankings and there's a UFC, you know, as sort of like a league, there's an easier path to the top. Like, even if you lose, there is a path, right? Whereas in boxing, like, you lose, and if, you know, you're out no matter, you know, what wins you start picking up. You know, it kind of feels like there's something a little more than just picking up victories within boxing.
Yeah, that's probably true.
Yeah. All right, well, with that out of the way, now let's discuss some of the MMA action that happened over the weekend.
All right.
Alexander Gustafsson retiring.
Yo, it's Swanee from South Dakota, and just thinking about Gustafsson and Smith, that fight, and the fact that Gustafsson is retiring off of that. And myself, I feel I kind of don't like it. I feel like Gustafsson was doing a lot of good things, and I feel like he could still make a big impact in 205. I mean, he was moving well. He was kind of getting Smith tired there. I don't think anyone can dispute that. At the end of those, the regular rounds, going into the champion rounds, Smith was.
So yeah, that ended a little weird, but so this caller doesn't really agree with Gustafsson retiring. He thinks.
What are you gonna do? You're gonna argue with him?
Gus has a little bit more in the tank. Are you okay with him walking away at this point?
Yeah, completely.
Yeah, right.
I've seen people before they even reach their prime walk away.
Yeah.
I keep forgetting his name, but his nickname was the Ninja of Love. He went on to go pursue, I think, a med degree because it was just something he would rather do. People retire at this site, like, dude, BJ Penn has really warped everyone's perspective about like when retirement is supposed to happen.
He's not getting knocked out.
Yeah, it's like he's not getting viciously put into a coma. Oh, gee, awesome. Well, let's just trot him back out there. Like, who are the clowns? I think this is a good argument. The point being is, dude, when you're done, you're done. It doesn't mean you're physically decrepit to the point where you can't even stand up. It means that the juice is no longer worth the squeeze. Someone was like, so of course, Anthony Smith wins, and people just can't give the guy any credit. Someone was like, well, you got to admit that wasn't the same Gustafsson that fought Jones. Okay, maybe it wasn't. Here's the point. Halfway Gus still torches 90% of that division, to the caller's point. The issue is that Gustafsson has a certain standard for himself. Here's what happens to fighters. They have a goal. And if they don't reach that goal, some of them say it's not worth it anymore.
Yep.
Some of them say, you know what? Maybe I just love fighting so much or competing. I'd like to just keep being active as long as I can. And they find a new purpose. Gustafsson doesn't have a new purpose as it relates to being a fighter. Either he's going to be the best and tell himself he's going to be the best, or this is no longer worth it. And I think that second Jones loss and the Johnson loss and this one was enough evidence for him to say, I'm not the best. And so if I'm not going to be the best, I don't have any desire to do this. It's a perfect time to get out.
By the way, it's Nick Dennis.
Nick Dennis, yeah.
Yeah, that was courtesy of Esther Lynn.
Yeah.
She just slacked me.
Yeah. The ninja of love.
Yeah.
He got out super early.
I didn't know him.
Because he wasn't around long enough.
He fought in what promotion? Did you get to find the UFC? Huh.
He fought in the UFC.
Interesting. Yeah.
And so people think you have to be like, Homer Simpson's dad shouting at clouds. You can't even raise your arms. You're so fucked up.
Yeah.
Who are these people that think you got to be a zombie before you go?
Yeah. I'm happy Gus is walking away because remember the war with John Jones, right? Even the last loss wasn't too pretty, and the war he had with DC as well. Like the man's been through a lot, And look, if you're not in it, like if you don't want to do it anymore, you shouldn't do it. I think it becomes a difficult point when like you want to do it, but then your body's not there. I feel like this is the completely opposite for Gustafsson. Like I saw him fight, and I'm like that's a good fighter.
Mm-hmm.
Like. He was moving well. He was quick. He was sharp. He got nice takedowns. The striking was good. It's just he didn't want it anymore. And I feel like
that's right.
You don't see that often.
Do you know when he didn't want it anymore? You know what the lesson there was for me? Was there a moment in that fight when you were like, uh-oh?
When he got his back taken?
No. Okay. I'll just say what it was for me.
Okay.
Tell me what you think about this. You've been in jiu-jitsu.
Mm-hmm.
You ever been in a position that was bad, but not horrible, but it wasn't clear how you were going to advance, and maybe it was either hurting or fatiguing, and you made a choice to consent to that position at that point? So it wasn't when he had the back, because if you remember, he had for me, again, I'm not saying you're wrong, I'm just saying for me. When he had the back, he was TP'd up, right?
Yeah.
It was when he took a knee. That was, to me, when he consented to having Anthony Smith on his back.
Mm-hmm.
And once he consented to that and was no longer willing to actively fight him off, that's when I was like, oh, he just relented to it. And when he relented to it, that's when Smith pushed his head down, banged on him, sunk the choke. That's when everything went from bad to worse in an instant.
Yeah, that's true.
That was a really bad sign for me.
And also, people don't want to hear it, but like this as somebody that trains, like the more you go to that, the easier it gets to each
100%.
time go to that. Because I remember when I first transitioned from wrestling to jiu-jitsu, like, dude, I would be like about to get like my chin, like, my jaw destroyed by a choke, and I still wouldn't tap. And then, then you start getting a little older, you start training a little less, and then, you get put into an uncomfortable situation. You're like, I don't have to be here, I'm out. So, it's a weird thing.
By the way, on that, you're right. So here's my point about this Gustafsson.
Mm-hmm.
He's not too damaged. He's not too beat up.
And that's exactly where he should be walking.
Perfect time to go.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Or if he's not ready, he wants to come back, that's fine too. But I'm just saying, if this is the end, okay.
Mm-hmm.
It's the end.
Same here. Yeah, I'm okay with it. All right, well, let's talk about the winner of that night, Anthony Smith, and sort of his attitude towards the game of MMA, the way he approaches things.
Luke, Danny was good. This is Lincoln calling out of San Antonio, Texas area where it's hot as Derek Lewis. Wow. But yeah, just wanted to call and ask y'all, what do y'all think about Anthony Smith? Isn't it a breath of fresh air to see somebody so brutally fucking honest? That guy's a class act. Just want to know what y'all think about him. Love the show. And yeah, keep up the good work, brother. Peace.
First of all, my
Have you
man
noticed-
has been smoking.
Yeah. He's like, what's up, San Antonio? Everybody's always like, yo, guys, keep up the good work, as if like they probably see we're like falling apart. Like, come on, just keep going.
Well, I can show up every time talking about how my rear end explodes and I haven't slept. And my face just looks like it's been hit by a shovel.
Yeah.
So probably that's what they're looking at.
We appreciate them.
Certainly.
Yeah,
We do. Dude, we had Anthony Smith on the show last week.
Yep.
And I have said this, dude, and this is the point I think people just need to just accept. Look, man, John Jones came out of nowhere, beat Andre Guzman, then Stephan Bonner, and then who was the Jake that they cut? I forget. On UFC 100. What was his name? He beat Heath Herring. But the name escapes me. But then he beats Brandon Barrett and Matt Hamill. Whatever happened with Matt Hamill. But you get the idea. So he just came out of the gate special. He came out of the woodwork just bombing on people. And those are fun to watch. a Habib that's 27-0, for example, just running through everybody, and that's all good and well, and that's fun. But dude, Habibs are rare, and John Joneses are rare. Sometimes guys don't have that same kind of athletic skill, although they can be very skilled. Sometimes they get off on the wrong foot. If you had rich parents and you had a tutor, you might do better on the SATs and you might get into a better college. If you didn't, it might be a little bit harder for you. But if you're smart and you're capable and you're hardworking, you can figure it out. If you don't make excuses for yourself, you can figure it out. And what happened with Anthony Smith was he got a weird, and I would say, inoptimal start in MMA. But he got right with the right coach. He got right with the right weight class. He got right with the right training. And over time, man, he kind of figured it out. He had the back of Volkan Oezdemir, fight over. He had the back of Alexander Gustafsson, fight over. That should tell you something, man.
Yeah.
You can say what you want about Rashad and Shogun being kind of at the end of their careers. Those guys, he put Gus at the end of his, and Volkan's still very much alive and kicking. So I have deep admiration for the guys who figured it out from day one. I have even a greater admiration for the ones who take time and figure it out a little bit later on, because those ones had to really work at it.
I mean, a lot of the things that Anthony Smith has been through would break any other fighter and would just make them quit. Like, this thing's not for me, And here he is, a title contender, and each time now proving. I think the doubts of him being, getting lucky with some of his first fights and whatnot, and him not being as good as the other fighters, I think that's starting to go away. I think that Gus victory was really important. And also just the way he did it, man. He looked good. And also, I don't know if you picked this up, but like, he just looked a lot more confident. Like, yes, he improved, and I'm sure especially you can pick this up, like you can look at things and that he's doing better than his previous fights. But from an attitude perspective, he just looks a lot more confident. Like he's really sure of himself as him being a top dog in that division. And
he's fighting better too. There's no denying he's fighting better than he did against,
for sure.
I don't know, Thiago Santos, where he was just kind of, he's still fighting rough and hard, but strategically, I would say. By the way, all that talk about there's no game plan. This is why doing interviews is so weird for me, because look, man,
you kept pushing that.
Well, because it doesn't make any sense. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, I knew he wasn't telling the truth. It's so weird in MMA media where like fighters and media just lie to each other all the time. It's this weird thing that I don't quite know what to do with, to be honest with you. I'm not, like, I get why he can't say anything, because what are you gonna do? You're gonna tell me on the air? But at the same, I don't know. It's weird. It's weird. MMA media is weird. Sorry, that's my view.
Yeah, it's strange.
Hey, Luke, Danny, Nino from Washington Township, New Jersey. How you doing? Just had a question here for you. So Anthony Smith looked very impressive with his win this weekend over Alexander. I was just wondering, what do you think's next for him in his career? Who do you think you fight? You think he'll possibly get another title shot after this John Jones fight? Or do you think maybe he'll fight the winner of Jan Blachowicz and Luke Rockhold? Just want to get your thoughts on what do you think's next for Anthony Smith. Thank you. Love your show. Have a good day, guys.
Great question.
Yeah, great question. So Campbell and I were hating on this matchup a little bit, not from the fight itself, but from the matchmaking.
Yeah.
Because look, you win, and what's next? But I don't know. I guess once it happened, I guess I feel a little bit different about it now.
Okay.
I'd love to see Smith versus Rockhold. That's the fight to make.
Yeah, I mean, it's just what.
Even if Rockhold takes an L, I'd love to see that.
So if you look at the rankings, Gustafsson heading into this fight was sitting at 2, Smith at 4.
Dude, I feel he's been at 2 like forever, 2 or 1.
Yeah. So I mean, now it's probably going to be a bit of a change there. I bet Santos goes to 2, and then Smith probably goes to 3, just given that Smith is going to be, or Santos is going to be fighting Jones next. I like the Rockhold fight. I really do. I know our own Casey, our videographer, doesn't like putting contenders against each other for very good reasons. I acknowledge the argument is strong, but selfishly, dude, I love watching contenders fight. Mm-hmm. When George St. Pierre fought Sean Shirk, I was like, oh my God. Or when when George St. Pierre also fought Frank Trigg. I mean, those were two guys who were like, itching to get back to a title opportunity, and they had to fight each other to get there. Dude, it was awesome to watch, man. So to me, it's like, dude, if Smith had a rematch against Santos, depending on what happens with Jones or Reyes or, I don't know. Dude, this guy, did I not call Alexander Rakic Did I not call him
Yeah.
big time?
Yeah.
And I talked about him on my radio show.
Save
as
your
well.
thought. The next question, it's about him.
I've been
so-
telling you, dude. You watch that guy on
He's
tape.
legit, man.
He
Yeah,
stood
he's
out to me
legit.
immediately. I was
Yeah.
like, whoa, he's different. So there's a lot of different. I would say Johnny Walker. Like, I know Casey. Casey, I know you don't want him to fight, but dude, I want him to fight because I think it'd be fun. And I know it'd be terrible for the division, but I don't care because I care more about my entertainment because I'm selfish. So there you go. How about that?
Fair.
All right.
All right, well let's talk about your boy, dude. Huge knockout win over Jimmy Manuwa. That was super impressive.
Hey, what's going on, Luke and Danny? Josh from San Diego again. I noticed on the beat you were talking about Alexander Ratchett and how you've been watching him for a while. After seeing that brutal KO kick to Jimmy Manuwa, who would you like him to fight next? And also, where do you think Jimmy Manuwa goes from here? He's a staple, always throws down, but he's on a pretty bad losing streak. Thanks, guys. Love the show.
So easy answer: Serkinov or Krylov or Uzdemir or Anderson.
Mhm.
Any of those guys, dude. Anybody sort of 8, 9-ish and below.
Yeah,
Man-
I don't
man-
have a strong preference.
Man was in top 10 exactly because here's the thing about Rakic. Clearly a ton of potential.
Yeah,
And there might be questions, but it's hard to ask them because we haven't seen enough tape yet. So what we have seen on tape like caught my attention immediately. I was like, "Whoa, he's good."
Yeah.
I need to see him against other competition. So any of those donks.
Yeah.
Ilir Latifi, have him fight him. Don't care. Any of those guys. Because, dude, here's the thing about Rakic. Clearly he has ridiculous power and speed. The guy can wrestle too.
he can.
He can.
Yeah.
People don't realize that he can wrestle too. Like, I don't know exactly how good he is, but he's pretty good.
Yeah.
Pretty good. I'm telling you, there are some guys on tape you can just look at and you may not know how good they are. Smith, let's say 3 years ago. There are some guys who come out on tape and they instantly that you're
Yeah.
like, whoa.
Yeah, for sure.
Rakic is one of those guys.
Dude, light heavyweights picking up, man.
Slowly but
getting
surely,
interesting,
right?
yeah. And I don't really get too picky with matchmaking until guys start reaching the top. Then that's when I start, my matchmaking brain goes off. But right now, anybody in the top 10, top 15 is fine.
Yep.
But let's talk about Jimmy Manuwa. Clearly, obviously, a very exciting fighter to watch. Live by the sword, die by the sword. But he is quite a skid right now. He's 4-fight losing streak. So what do you think is next for him? And also, he's been stopped 3 times out of those 4 losses.
Yeah, it's starting to get concerning. And
It is.
here's the thing I mentioned. It's not really that he's losing, which is the problem. It's that he is almost 40 years old.
It's true, yeah.
And so you begin to wonder, like, this is not trending in the right direction professionally. And so the UFC has an obligation to ask about not merely what obligation they have to him as a competitor, but what obligation they have to him as a human, as a person, and his long-term health. So if that means this is the end, then that's what it means. If that means there's maybe one more and they matchmake him appropriately, I think what they thought was, hey, we're going to give you an unranked contender.
Mm-hmm.
Problem was they gave him maybe the best unranked contender, and you can clearly see, he should not be unranked anymore. So, dude, you got to have tough conversations.
Yeah.
Here's the thing I walked away from. Didn't you feel this way watching? Dude, it would hurt to watch Gustafsson go. It hurt, dude.
It felt weird.
The ending in this game.
It's rough.
Everyone sees St. Pierre's presser and they think, oh, gee, what it's sort of bittersweet. Dude, most of the time it's just bitter when these guys retire. It's
especially
because end.
It's not like some of these other guys where they've reached glory in the sense of championship glory, and then they fall off and then they retire at some point. You're like, man, that's a fall from grace. Gus was so good, but as you said, he came in this era where he's literally in the same era where 2 of the best fighters in the world, pound for pound, are in that same division. And I think if he would have came 5 years earlier or even 5 years from now, odds are he probably would have been champion. So what this guy's been through, and he's come close, so close so many times. And also to leave the way he left on Saturday, it just hurts. This sport's very unforgiving, man. It's sad.
Just, dude, most of the time you walk away on your hands and knees.
Yeah.
It's awful. It's so awful. Yeah. But that's the game they play,
Yeah,
it's just
that's the nature of the game.
Everyone thinks they're going to beat it, and some of them do, but most of them don't. It's really hard to watch. I hate it.
Yeah. All right. What do you want to talk about next? Possibly what happens to the flyweight division if Cejudo picks up a win at UFC 238, illegal streaming, or paywalls in MMA. Pick your poison.
Ooh. Which one do you like best?
I'm letting you pick.
Which one do you like best?
Illegal streaming, man. I'm just kidding.
The paywall question. What's it about?
The paywall is interesting. you know, there being a lot of paywalls now with the Zone, obviously, you know, ESPN Plus, Fight Pass, etc. You know, just MMA going behind a paywall.
Let's try that one.
All right, let's do it.
Hey, Luke and Danny. This is James H. from San Diego. My question has to do with the new paywalls that seems like all the new major companies are putting the sport behind. It seems like it's kind of, I don't know, you don't have to pay to watch the NFL or Super Bowl, but it seems like every fight you want to watch, you have to pay for these days. It seems like it puts a major ceiling on the growth of the sport. I don't know. Just wonder what your thoughts are on that. Thanks. Love the show.
Paywall putting a cap on the growth of MMA, you think? Safe to say, yeah.
Yeah, for sure. I'm somebody who has a radio show behind a paywall.
Mhm.
I know exactly what the challenges are like.
Yeah.
It hurts visibility. There is no denying it hurts visibility. So, for example, there's a free listening weekend. I'm not even trying to do a cheap plug on my other job. I'm just trying to make a point. They get after us to promote that because it's your chance to just be like to peek behind the curtain and see all that's there to get money from you. Here is basically what's happening. This is true for all media, including MMA media, but also media content in the case of what the UFC is producing, right? Video content. Everything is going to go behind a paywall.
Yeah, that's
Everything is going to go slowly but surely, which is going to make some things more sustainable, but it's going to make them a lot less visible. Basically, here's the trade-off that MMA has decided to make. This includes the majority of the top promoters. They have decided they would rather be, and this includes includes Bellator, includes UFC. They're operating on like a freemium model, but they had basically decided that it is better to have long-term sustainability by having shared risk with other entities. So that includes Serie A, whatever else is on ESPN Plus.
Right,
We'll all share the risk here. We'll be a lot less visible, but if we can generate enough income, we can do this for a very long time. That is the trade-off. That is what they have decided to do. And probably for good reason, because there has been a great deal of volatility in the promoting market for UFC and for MMA. And MMA media is the same way. They had the launch of The Athletic. You know, they got a great team there, but the bet is that if you put enough great content behind it, whether it's MMA, boxing, but also NFL, MLB, whatever, that you'll have reduced visibility. But there's this shared pool that if we all work together, we can sustain this. And whether that ends up true, we'll have to see.
Right.
But that's ultimately the idea. That's how SiriusXM works, my other job. There's Howard, there's NFL, there's music stations, there's talk stations, there's MMA. I think they have 34, 35 million subscribers. That sustains everything. The trade-off is that unless you pay for it, nobody hears it.
exactly, yeah. And that's just the way everything is going. Like when the internet first started, becoming what it is now, right? Like the internet we know now, everything was free, right? And for a few years, we realized that didn't work, especially in media.
And advertising based.
Advertisement went down with the internet, and now everyone's trying to find new ways to go behind a paywall because it seems to be the most sustainable model.
But I mean, here's the thing: Facebook and Google have eaten all the ad money.
Yeah.
And so as a consequence, people are saying, well, what are ways in which we can, but like, look, you can do both. You can have partly free content. You can have partly paid content. You can have, there's different ways to package everything together. No one really knows exactly what the answer is. Some players have it worked out in either medium. But basically what MMA promoters have decided is we'd rather have guaranteed rev, share a risk, go behind a paywall and live rather than biggest audience possible. I recommended,
right.
I don't know if you saw.
Also, there are questions to be asked about how much bigger can MMA get in the U.S. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And I think the UFC factored that in when
Sure.
going behind the paywall.
Last thing on this, because what's the word with Benavidez? Is he coming on here?
I'm about to call him. Do you want me to leave you with a question?
Yeah, no. Leave me with a point I'd like to make.
Okay.
And then we'll.
So we can sign off here.
Yes.
With me.
Yeah. Sign off with you. Good job. And I want to make a point, so go ahead and get Mr. Benavidez if you can, please. The point I wanted to make was, if you guys didn't see, Jimmy Pitaro is the gentleman who runs ESPN. He did a podcast with Peter Kafka of Recode, which, by the way, on all disclosure, is a Vox property. Anyway, so the old head of ESPN was John Skipper. John Skipper now runs DAZN. Anyway, so Jimmy Pitaro is the new one. Pitaro, I'm not sure how to pronounce it anymore. But in any event, Jimmy has sort of talked about a lot of things about what his vision for ESPN is. He talked about ESPN Plus and what its value proposition is, UFC content, what its value proposition is. But what was kind of interesting were sort of two different things I picked up on. One was he said what really matters for the other leagues, now not UFC, but like NBA or MLB or NFL, because he was asked, what's the likelihood that those guys sign with a Google? What's the likelihood they sign with a Facebook for their like television deal? And his answer was probably low, because what they really value is widest audience possible. Well, what if you don't value widest audience possible? Then you're much more amenable to a potential streaming deal. So that was kind of interesting. So he liked ESPN's value proposition in the future to acquire NFL rights, because they are one of the ones who can offer you a niche, more directed to consumer platform in ESPN Plus, or this big, ESPN ecosystem if you're the NFL. The other one that I thought was kind of interesting was, he says it outright. He says it will have no effect on how they cover the sports, which is just not true. It absolutely will. But he's like, we're really big on access. What they want is access for everything, for basketball, for UFC, for Major League Baseball, for NFL, for everything. They want to be in touch with the athlete, blah, blah, blah. And his point was how important that was. And then he was asked, won't that impact how, your investigative arm works? And he was like, no, it definitely won't. Of course it will. Of course it will. And by the way, people have detected, at least in the basketball side, that they take a bit of a softer approach, and that the leagues trust them to do things. So, so this new ESPN is about working more in concert with the leagues, providing the direct-to-consumer aspect if that's what they prefer, giving a broader reach if not, if that's not what they want. So if you guys didn't see it, I tweeted it out. It should be my Twitter page, but you can just go to Recode is the name of the site. It's against a Vox property, and Peter Kafka did it with Jimmy Pitaro.